Well, I know that I was told that I was abandoned and found in a train station in Seoul, Korea. From there, I went to an orphanage with Holt. And then after that, I came to the United States. I was adopted by a family by the time I was around 11 months old. And at that point in time, my family was living in Texas. They're from New York, but my adoptive father was working in Texas, so we were there till I was about 4 or 5, right before kindergarten. And then we moved back to New York. And I I don't know a lot. You know, my mother always told me she thought it was like Miriam and Moses, and I was left in a basket somewhere. And um, my understanding of other people's experiences, it sounds, pretty normal as far as being abandoned somewhere that is public and safe, hopefully, and that they could get you help. Because I've heard other stories that weren't as fortunate as that. But that's what I know. I don't know a whole lot. I know that I was given a birth date, a name. I was born with a cleft palate, and I had surgery in Korea before I left. Uh, and then as an adult, since I've had some more, but that was a kind of a big piece to me, actually, because, well, in a measurable way, my parents had wanted to adopt a child that was, I don't know if handicap is a word, but they were understanding there were needs. There were kids that had, physical disabilities and different problems, and they wanted to help a child like that. But I'm the youngest of 8, and so they didn't have really the resources, the means to take care of a very sick kid. So they thought, oh, a cleft palate, that seems like a doable type of thing. And it was a pretty minor cleft. I mean, visually you could see it, but you see some clefts that are very serious. Mine wasn't. I didn't have any speech problems. I didn't have any problems eating or things of that nature. It was more an aesthetic. Um, so really, because I had that cleft palate, it probably, led me down a really great path. It was something that I don't take for granted. It's interesting because growing up, I was adopted into a um, Caucasian family. So I grew up in, what people would call white America. And so, I definitely knew that I was different just by looking at me, but I never, the growing up experience, I think I would say it was pretty all American apple pie. Um, and it was good. There's a lot of people, that aren't adopted that don't fare as well in the family that they're born into. So it was a good experience. I had a lot of siblings. My parents had 6 biological children, and then they adopted my brother, who is Native American, and then they adopted me because they said they didn't want him to be the only adopted one in this family. So, but as far as growing up, I always felt, I honestly, I never really felt Korean or Asian, if you will. As an adult, I feel I've taken on a different understanding and appreciation of my uh, nationality. My family was very religious, and it was that religion that brought me here. But we differ on some of those things, so, but I don't think that's an adoptee issue. I think that's just a human issue. People are different that way. I certainly appreciate and I'm glad that I was raised in that environment. There's many benefits to it, but so we differed somewhat in our philosophies and theologies, but the things that really mattered, we met on the same page.
My parents both passed away in the last few years. And it's from that I've really been able to appreciate all that they've done. It's a little overwhelming even.
I don't have kids. I like kids, but it's not really something I have an interest in doing, raising, And when I think of the steps that it actually took for me to get into this family, I'm just really in awe. Really in awe. I have a lot of gratitude. I left home at 18 when I graduated from high school. I went to college in Rochester, New York. I earned a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, and it was that time that I really delved into the social sciences and the humanities, and I realized I wasn't good at math. I wasn't, and they're like, you're Asian. I got the stereotypical, but that's when I started to really, I guess, learn things that I could apply to life, my own life in general. I've had a good life as an adult. I finished college in 95 and I moved to Denver in 96. And it's been good. Denver's been a good city. I've liked it a lot. It was just, wanting to get out of the East, wanting something different. For the last 20 years, I've worked. And it's only recently that I've gotten involved in the past, I'm not sure how many years, 3 or 4 years now, that I've gotten involved with the Korean community and really starting to appreciate the Korean side of who I am, Up until that point, I was just an American girl, all American, going to school, doing what everybody else is doing. There was nothing about being Korean specifically that spoke to me. I liked things that were Korean, but I didn't understand a lot of them. I wasn't familiar with the food, didn't know how to use chopsticks, I have not gone back to Korea. I'm not against it, but there's nothing in me saying go. I've had things say go here, and I felt it, but so I feel like when I'm ready to go, I now have ample resources, really great resources to call upon, people that I know can either go with me or give me the, inside scoop, that kind of stuff. I like that I've connected with the Korean community and specifically adoptees because you get to see that your thoughts and ideas and issues they're not unique. And that's been, I never had any issues with any of it, honestly. I didn't need any validation or I didn't need any support from anybody or patting on the back, but to just know that others are going through it's a neat thing. I've enjoyed it a lot. I bought a house in Aurora. It's right in the Denver-Aurora border, and it's not too far from Havana, and there's a bunch of Korean restaurants in that area. And it's not my first time interacting with real Koreans, but I've interacted enough more, going to H Mart or the restaurants, whatever. And I find one of the unfortunate things is that native Koreans and Korean adoptees, there's a big chasm between us, a cultural gap, all these old Korean ladies, and they were old ladies. They would tell me their age, and I thought that was kind of odd. And then Cindy Seal with our car group explained to me what that was all about, the age being, this automatic respect that you should get, just culturally different, and I didn't really understand it. A lot of older Korean ladies that I've experienced are mean or have not been nice to me anyway. So I don't really know what that's all about. It's obviously not personal, but I sort of chalked it up to being cultural. I think I know the thing that was probably the most valuable after having a family, a secure, strong, stable family, was growing up in a family that valued education. They didn't necessarily value wealth or status. There's nothing wrong with those things, but it ultimately was about knowledge, having the wherewithal of things. I feel really lucky, I don't have anything to complain about. I could make stuff up if I wanted to, but in the big picture, I have a house over my head, I eat well, I have structured my life in a way that I enjoy it. I have free time that I like. I love my animals. I don't have kids, but I have 2 dogs and a cat, and I do really, really, really like animals. And as I get older, I get a little crazy about it in my head. I didn't realize that I don't have there's no reason not to love animals, but I love them so much, They really bring a lot of joy. I'm good as an adult. I'm really good. You could take away all my stuff. You could burn my house down. As long as I'm physically healthy and my mind goes, I'm resourceful. I tend to be a positive glass half full person. Sometimes it feels like a lottery, like like a roll of the dice, and I got, or whatever, I was the lucky number that got picked. That's what I feel. That's what I definitely feel. So as an adult, I feel good. I've never really thought of myself as Mary, the Korean adoptee. Yes, I'm adopted, but it's all you know. You don't know anything else. People will say, when I say my parents, your real parents, I'm like, my parents. I didn't realize it needed to be broken down and defined, and I get that it may be confusing to someone not really understanding, but to me, I've never thought of myself as an adoptee because I've just always seen myself as the 8th child in this family that happened to come be adopted, come to America, and that's the story, but it's not a big part of the experience, really. I definitely identify as an American, and I feel really proud to be an American. It's a good country. I don't think there's anywhere else really operating with this kind of social experiment, So you can't really, I always, in all the goodness, I always think back to my mother and father. And I really, probably more than my other siblings, we've talked about it some. There's a different layer on life when someone chooses you. And someone that you could easily think, well, they're tapped out, they've already got 7 kids, So that on top of it, but when there's a certain appreciation, I think. As an adoptee, I think if those feelings don't come to you, it's unfortunate. I feel very fortunate that my experience has been what it has been.